Is your child addicted to junk food? Are you worried that junk food is taking over? In this video, I'm sharing my top tips for helping kids overcome a junk food addiction and improve their overall diet. This will help them be better nourished, calmer, and healthier now and in the future. I'm Jill Castle, a pediatric dietitian, and I've helped thousands of families in my private practice improve their children's health by teaching them essential healthy habits around food and eating. I even wrote a book called Kids Thrive at Every Size, which outlines how to help kids make healthy food choices and build good eating habits. In this video, you're going to learn what junk food really is and what it isn't, whether or not kids can really be addicted to it, how the 90-10 rule can help you strike a nutritious food balance, the easiest and most obvious way to cut back on junk food, and more tips for reducing junk food in your family's diet. Let's dig in. Okay, what is junk food actually? And I'm going to put the air quotes around junk food because we call a lot of things junk food and they're not all junk food. So we have processed food and we have ultra processed food and we have whole foods. So processed and ultra processed foods are merely defined that way based on the level of processing. Okay, so the mechanisms to get food to look the way it does and taste the way it does is called the processing part. Now, most food is processed because we don't go out to the farm and sit in the crops and eat corn on the cob right off the stalk. There has to be some level of processing, even of whole foods, to bring it into our grocery store and serve it in our restaurants. But processed and ultra processed foods really does mean that there are higher levels of processing for those foods in order to make them shelf stable, in order for them to taste a certain way, in order for them to last longer or do what they're supposed to do when you're cooking with them. The words processed and ultra processed do not reflect the nutrient content. So this is where it gets confusing because when we hear the words processed and ultra processed, we automatically think unhealthy, but that's not necessarily true. So processed and ultra processed foods can be high in fat, high in salt, high in sugar, and low in nutrients. So think foods like candy, chips, cookies, crackers, French fries, frozen pizzas, things you can microwave, things that are ready-made for you, things that don't have a lot of nutrition, like the candy and the chips. These are the foods that happen to also be ultra-processed that you need to watch out for. Now, in some of these ultra-processed foods, particularly, you're going to find ingredients like high fructose corn syrup, hydrogenated or interesterified oils, hydrolyzed proteins, additives like non-nutritive sweeteners or flavors, natural colorings, flavor enhancers, emulsifiers, sweeteners, thickeners. There's a lot of things that get incorporated into ultra-processed foods, and where you can find these things on the ingredient list. So that will give you a clue to the level of processing, the ingredients, whether they are nutritious, meaning full of nutrients or not. But here's the thing. Ultra-processed foods can also be nutritious. So soy milk is considered an ultra-processed food. It goes through a lot of processing in order to get it to be of the right consistency, of the right texture, of the right flavoring so that people will consume it. It's not unhealthy for you. In fact, if you happen to be a person who has a milk allergy or other food intolerances, soy milk may be your go-to choice for milk. And that is a very nutritious choice if you are in that situation. Here's another one that's going to surprise you. But if you look at the categorization of ultra-processed foods, Baby formula falls into that because baby formula has to be made from the ground up. And so there happens to be a lot of processing in order to get that ready and appropriate for an infant's consumption. Now, we know that infant formula is very nutritious, very good for babies. So this is where that nuance is. Not all ultra processed foods are unhealthy. And so the nutrients matter. So that's why I want you to look at the ingredients on the back of these packages and look at the nutritional profile so you can see the levels of fiber, the level of vitamin D, vitamin A, vitamin C, calcium. You can see that those nutrients are there. Now, I think you and I both know that there are certain foods that are considered ultra processed and we can call junk food. Things like chips and candy, orange fishy crackers, things of that nature are ultra processed and they are not nutrient dense foods for our children. Let's talk about the brain and addiction to food because there's a lot of people talking about the fact that food is addictive. So we know from research that eating food high in fat and sugar can cause a dopamine release in the reward center of the brain. And that can cause neurochemical changes in the brain that mimic addiction. Pleasure and reward are activated in the brain when we eat high calorie, high fat, high sugary foods. And repetitive eating of these foods, chips, crackers, sweets, junk food, can change the brain's reward pathways and may even lead to overeating. So, how do we deal with this? One of the things I teach my clients is something I call the 90-10 food balance. So 90% of the foods a child eats comes from whole foods, those things that are minimally processed and nutrient rich, those categories of foods I talk about here on my channel and that you probably hear about all the time. Things like dairy foods or fortified non-dairy alternatives. Protein foods, vegetables, fruits, whole grains. These are whole foods that supply a lot of nutrients and have minimal processing. 90%, most of a child's diet should be coming from those foods. 10% can come from those processed, ultra-processed foods, those foods that are sugary, fried, high in fat, high in calories, and low in nutrition. So things, again, like chips, crackers, cookies, candy, ice cream. That is about, when you think about 10%, that is about one normal serving of that food on average each day. Okay, so what is the easiest way to cut back on junk food? Cut back on how much you buy at the grocery store and bring home to your family. That's the easiest way to cut down on it. Now, we know you have more control over this with younger children, and it gets trickier as your kids get older. But if you're just starting out with a toddler or a preschooler or even a young elementary school-age child, you can cut back on how much of these foods you bring into your home. Because if they're in your home, they will be eaten. So let me give you some more tips, because that was the most obvious one, and I had to say it. But here's some more tips for you. Set a limit on how much junk food is allowed outside of your home. So again, if you are sending your child to a birthday party, you can have a discussion beforehand and talk about what is going to be served. And you and your child can have an agreement on what things they are going to eat there and how much of it. You can say, you can have cake, you can have ice cream, but I also want you to have some of the fruit that's here, and some of the vegetables that are here. So it can be an ongoing conversation. Now, in that same situation, when your child goes to a birthday party and has 3 or 4 sweets or treats, how do you manage that? Well, you cut back on the rest of the days moving forward. You just decide that the next couple of days, there are no treats or sweets being served because they had a lot at the birthday party. So you can sort of manage this as the adult in the house. You can manage this and be able to forecast way better than your child can what is coming up for your child during the week and how you're going to balance it using this 90-10 food balance. So, the other thing, if you are or if your child is having chips or cookies as a snack, for example, always pair it with a nutritious food. So, for example, if your child's having cookies, serve it with milk. If your child is having crackers, serve some cheese alongside. If you're serving chips, offer salsa, guacamole, or hummus to pair it with that. So you're always bringing a nutritious, wholesome food to partner in with that junk food. Remember, not all junk foods are equal. So in the category of crackers, we have whole grain crackers that are only made with whole wheat, oil, and salt. And we have orange, fishy shaped crackers that have a lot of ingredients in them. And so the spectrum of crackers, it's not equal. So read your labels, look at the ingredients, make a decision that you feel good about for your family. And then last, another tip, if you're really tired of those granola bars that you're buying at the grocery store because you feel like they're more like a candy bar than a really healthy granola bar, look for some recipes online and see if you can make them for your family. And even better, have your child help you make them. Again, you can control the ingredients when you make your own and package them in single servings. When my kids were little, I used to make whole wheat brownies. So the flour, I'd make homemade brownies and I'd swap out the white flour for whole grain flour, a whole wheat flour. And then I would cut them and I would package them in single serving portions and throw them into a Ziploc freezer bag, and they sat in the freezer and we pulled out one at a time. So that is another way that you can really start to scale back on some of these ultra processed foods that happen to not be nutritious. They happen to be more like a junk food, and help your child have a healthier diet. That's it for today. I hope this is helpful to you. Leave me a comment below if you liked this video and let me know, what strategy are you going to use to reduce the junk food in your child's diet? See you next time.